March 21st, 1984, 11:16 p.m. Sea of Japan, 200 miles east of Vladivostok. The night sea is black and restless, broken only by the white wake of a 90,000-ton American aircraft carrier cutting through the water at flank speed. On the flight deck of USS Kitty Hawk, sailors feel the vibration through steel boots as the ship turns into the wind, preparing for night flight operations. Jet engines scream. Red deck lights glow like embers in the dark. Far below, silent, unseen, another warship is hunting. Inside the Soviet nuclear-powered attack submarine K-314, Captain Vladimir Medvedev grips the edge of the periscope well. The boat is running shallow, too shallow. The depth gauge trembles just above disaster. Around him, the control room smells of oil, sweat, and ozone. Green instrument lights cast sharp shadows across tired faces. K-314 is not lost, it is tracking. For 3 days, Medvedev's submarine has been shadowing the American carrier battle group. The mission is classified even within the fleet. Observe, record, and, if war comes, strike. Soviet naval doctrine demands it. If NATO launches first, carriers like Kitty Hawk must die within minutes. The method is dangerous, experimental, almost reckless. Instead of active sonar, which would betray their presence, K-314 is using wake-homing tracking, following microscopic disturbances left behind by the carrier's massive propellers. A ghost trail in the water, invisible, unpredictable, and lethal if misjudged. Speed 5 knots, Medvedev orders quietly. The helmsman repeats it. The submarine glides forward, its massive hull suspended in black water only meters below the surface. Above them, the carrier's screws churn the sea into chaos. The wake swirls, shifts, fades. Then something changes. The sonar operator stiffens. His fingers hover over the console. "Captain, wake signature is breaking up." Medvedev leans closer. The American carrier is maneuvering, turning into the wind to launch aircraft. That turn is deadly. The wake collapses. The trail K-314 has been following simply vanishes. For a few seconds, the Soviet submarine is blind. "Emergency ballast, prepare to dive," Medvedev snaps. But it's already too late. Above the control room, a low, grinding vibration begins to build. Not the distant hum of propellers, but something vast, overhead, directly overhead. The sound is wrong. On Kitty Hawk, no one sees it, no alarm sound. The carrier plows ahead, its reinforced hull slicing through the night sea as deck crews signal aircraft into position. Then, impact. A colossal metallic explosion rips through the ocean. Inside K-314, men are thrown from their stations. Lights flicker, gauges spin wildly. The submarine shudders as if struck by a hammer the size of a building. "Collision! Collision!" someone screams. The forward compartments echo with the shriek of twisting steel. The submarine lurches upward, then violently downward. Loose equipment flies. A sailor slams into a bulkhead, cracking his helmet. Medvedev is on his feet instantly. "Report! Flooding? Reactor status?" "Pressure hull intact," the engineer shouts back, terror in his voice. "But the sail! Damage to the sail!" Above them, Kitty Hawk has just run directly over the Soviet submarine. The carrier's massive bronze propellers, each one taller than a house, have struck K-314's sail, ripping metal like paper. One blade shatters, flinging debris into the sea. Another gouges deep into the submarine's superstructure. For a heartbeat, both ships are locked together by momentum and physics alone. Then they separate. K-314 is forced downward, spinning slightly, alarms blaring. Medvedev grips the periscope stand to stay upright as the depth needle drops. Blow ballast! Stabilize depth, now! Compressed air roars through the tanks. The submarine fights to regain control, hovering on the edge of survival and the abyss. Silence follows, thick, unnatural silence. No depth charges, no torpedoes. The Americans don't even know what they've hit. Medvedev's hands shake as he surveys the damage reports coming in from every compartment. His submarine, deep inside enemy waters, has just survived a collision with the most powerful symbol of American naval might. And that symbol is now above them, wounded. In the dark control room of K-314, one thought cuts through the fear like ice. If this had been war, it would have started now.
The first thing Captain Vladimir Medvedev listens for is pursuit. He stands motionless in the control room, one hand raised, not in command, but in instinct. Every man aboard K-314 knows the ritual. No one speaks unless spoken to, no unnecessary movement. The submarine drifts in the water like a wounded animal, ballast barely holding, reactor humming low and steady. If the Americans have realized what happened, the response will be immediate. Depth charges, ASW helicopters, torpedoes dropped into the dark like judgment. The sonar operator swallows hard, eyes glued to his headphones. "Nothing," he whispers. "No screws, no active sonar. They're slowing." Above them, USS Kitty Hawk is in chaos. On the bridge of the carrier, officers feel the jolt travel through the hull, a violent shudder that rattles bulkheads and sends coffee cups crashing to the deck. For a split second, the helmsman thinks they've struck a container or submerged debris. Then the vibration worsens. "Engineering, report!" the officer of the deck shouts. From deep inside the ship, the answer comes back strained and confused. "Loss of power on the port shaft, severe vibration, we're shutting it down." The carrier begins to slow, its enormous mass pushing water aside, as if reluctant to admit injury. No alarms indicate enemy contact, no radar blips, no sonar warning. To the Americans, it is an accident. To the Soviets below, it is a miracle. Back aboard K-314, damage reports filter in piece by piece. The sail, the tall structure housing masts and periscopes, is mangled. Metal plating is torn back. Hydraulic lines are severed. The periscope is jammed at an angle, useless. But the pressure hull, the thin line between life and instant death, is intact. "Reactor nominal," the chief engineer reports. "No radiation leaks." Medvedev exhales for the first time since impact. Then the political reality crashes down on him. They have collided with an American aircraft carrier during one of the most dangerous periods of the Cold War. No declaration, no warning, no witnesses who understand what truly happened. If the Americans decide this was an attack, the captain lowers his voice. "Reduce speed, hold depth, absolute silence." For nearly 20 minutes, K-314 remains motionless beneath the carrier group. The ocean seems to pause, as if waiting for permission to continue. In the sonar room, faint noises return. Distant propellers, escorts repositioning. Destroyers fan out cautiously, their sonar sweeping wide arcs through the water. But not downward. The Americans are searching for mines. On the bridge of Kitty Hawk, no one yet suspects a Soviet nuclear submarine was directly beneath them. Flight operations are suspended. Engineers argue over damaged propulsion systems. A fragment of twisted bronze, nearly a meter long, is recovered from the water. It does not match any American propeller design. A junior officer stares at it too long. Back below, Medvedev knows they cannot stay.
The damaged sail makes high-speed submerged travel dangerous. Surfacing is unthinkable. American escorts would spot them instantly. But remaining under the carrier group invites discovery. He makes his decision. We withdraw, slow, deep, south by southwest. The helmsman adjusts the planes. The submarine eases downward, slipping beneath the layer of cold water that bends sonar like glass. The escort ship's sonar distort, scatter, lose cohesion. K-314 vanishes. Hours later, as dawn breaks over the Sea of Japan, Kitty Hawk limps eastward under reduced power, officially reporting a collision with an unknown submerged object. No accusations are made, no alerts sent to DEFCON command. In Vladivostok, when K-314 finally reports in, silence fills the room. Senior admirals listen to Medvedev's account without interruption. Wake tracking, shallow depth, carrier turn, impact. When he finishes, one of them removes his glasses and rubs his eyes. "You understand," the admiral says slowly, "that if either side had fired, we would not be having this conversation." Medvedev nods. He has replayed that moment 1,000 times already. The sound of steel tearing, the darkness, the weight of history pressing down through hundreds of meters of water. The Soviet Navy will later blame him, strip him of command, call the collision reckless. But Medvedev knows the truth. On that night, beneath the Sea of Japan, 2 superpowers passed within meters of annihilation, and neither of them even knew how close they came.
The official story is written within hours. In the sterile language of naval reports, the incident is reduced to a sentence. USS Kitty Hawk experienced propulsion damage after striking an unidentified submerged object. No mention of a submarine. No mention of the Cold War. No hint that 2 nuclear powers brushed past catastrophe in the dark. But behind closed doors, both sides begin asking the questions that matter. At Yokosuka Naval Base, Kitty Hawk enters port under escort. Civilian dock workers are cleared away. Cameras are restricted. Navy divers slip into the harbor before sunrise, descending along the carrier's massive stern. What they find is not debris. The portside propeller is shattered, one blade sheared clean off, another bent like soft clay. Embedded in the twisted metal is something unmistakable: gray Soviet steel, still bearing traces of red anti-corrosion paint. A U.S. Naval intelligence officer runs his thumb over the markings and goes very still. This was no accident with a log, no drifting wreck. This was contact with a Soviet nuclear submarine inside Japan's defensive perimeter. Across the Pacific, in Vladivostok, K-314 is brought in under similar secrecy. The submarine surfaces at night, her sail wrapped in tarps, floodlights kept low. Sailors are ordered to say nothing to their families, to other crews, even to each other. When the coverings come off in dry dock, the damage is horrifying. The sail looks as if it has been mauled by a giant blade. Entire sections are torn away. Periscope housings are crushed. A jagged gouge runs along the casing where the carrier's propeller bit deep. Lodged in the wreckage is a prize no one expected: a chunk of bronze propeller stamped with American manufacturing codes. Soviet intelligence officers photograph it from every angle. Proof. Captain Medvedev is summoned to Moscow. Not congratulated, not thanked, interrogated. In a windowless room, senior officers and political overseers demand to know why his submarine was operating so close to the surface, why wake tracking was used so aggressively, why he allowed his boat to be placed beneath an aircraft carrier. Medvedev answers calmly. Doctrine required it. Orders encouraged it.
everyone knew the risks. That answer does not save him. The Soviet Navy needs a scapegoat, someone to absorb the embarrassment of being nearly crushed under an American carrier. Medvedev is quietly removed from command. His career stalls. His name is erased from promotion lists. The technology, however, survives. Wake tracking is not abandoned. It is refined, perfected. The lesson learned is not caution, but control. On the American side, the reaction is just as quiet and just as serious. The Pentagon classifies the incident at the highest level. Carrier battle groups receive new instructions, unpredictable maneuvers, altered screw patterns, random speed changes. Anti-submarine warfare drills intensify overnight. Because now the unthinkable is confirmed. Soviet submarines are close enough to touch an aircraft carrier. Years later, a U.S. admiral will admit privately, "That night scared us more than any missile test." Because missiles can be tracked, submarines cannot. And on that March night in 1984, a single navigational miscalculation, measured in meters, nearly forced two nations into a war neither could stop. Captain Medvedev returns home to his family with no medals, no public recognition. But sometimes, in quiet moments, he allows himself one thought. He did not fire. Neither did they. And because of that, the world woke up the next morning unchanged, never knowing how close the ocean came to boiling with nuclear fire. Time passes, but the incident does not fade. It sinks deeper into classified annexes, restricted briefings, and the unspoken memory of men who were there. In public, the Cold War continues its familiar rhythm of speeches, exercises, and threats. Beneath the surface, something has shifted. Inside NATO war colleges, Kitty Hawk is no longer just a carrier, it is a case study. In windowless classrooms, officers study diagrams showing the carrier's turn into the wind, the sudden collapse of the wake pattern, the blind seconds that followed. Instructors emphasize how close the Soviet submarine came to the carrier's centerline, how a slightly different angle would have meant the propellers missed the sail and struck the pressure hull instead. That outcome would have been catastrophic. A crushed nuclear submarine, a reactor at risk, hundreds dead, and an American carrier crippled in hostile waters. No scenario ends without escalation. The U.S. Navy quietly adjusts its doctrine. Carrier commanders are warned, assume you are always being tracked. Assume the enemy is already inside your defenses. Assume the ocean is not empty, only patient. New sonar arrays are rushed into service. Towed systems grow longer. Helicopter patrols widen their arcs. The ocean becomes louder, more crowded with listening devices. And still, it is not enough. On the Soviet side, the lesson is interpreted differently. In classified fleet meetings, admirals point to the bronze propeller fragment displayed on a felt-lined table. They speak of proximity, of penetration, of proof that American naval power is not invulnerable. One officer taps the metal and says, "We touched them. Imagine if we had struck first." New submarines are designed with quieter hulls, improved sensors, wake-homing systems that can adjust dynamically to sudden maneuvers. The margin for error shrinks. The sea becomes a chessboard measured in meters and seconds. For Captain Medvedev, life moves on, but never fully forward. He is assigned shore duties, training roles, positions that keep him useful but invisible. Younger officers do not know his history. Older ones avoid discussing it. At night, he sometimes dreams of the sound. Not the impact, but the moment before it, the low vibration growing stronger, the realization that something massive is directly above, the helplessness of physics. Years later, when the Soviet Union begins to crack, archives loosen, officers retire, stories slip out in fragments, over drinks, in memoir drafts, in quiet interviews that skirt the truth. An American sailor recalls the shudder aboard Kitty Hawk. A Soviet engineer remembers scraping American bronze from twisted steel. Analysts begin to connect the dots. The collision is finally acknowledged. Not as a near war, but it should have been. Because what happened in the Sea of Japan was not just an accident, it was a warning, a demonstration of how modern warfare leaves no room for error, no buffer between surveillance and catastrophe. The Cold War did not end with a battle. It ended with restraint, with moments like this, where men chose procedure over panic, silence over retaliation. And yet, the ocean remembers. Somewhere in the Sea of Japan, tiny fragments of steel and bronze still rest on the seabed, slowly corroding. Evidence of the night when a Soviet submarine captain looked up through tons of water and realized that history, fate, and a 90,000-ton aircraft carrier were about to collide. In March 1984, the world's newspapers are filled with familiar Cold War noise, missile tests, diplomatic protests, rhetoric sharpened for television. There is no headline about the Sea of Japan, no breaking news banner, no emergency session of the United Nations. That silence is deliberate. Inside the Pentagon, the incident is discussed only in rooms without windows. Transcripts are typed, stamped, locked away. Analysts argue late into the night over one question. What if the Soviets had believed they were under attack and responded? The answer is always the same. They would have fired. A Soviet submarine crushed beneath a U.S. carrier would look, on sonar and seismic sensors, exactly like an act of war. Standard operating procedure would demand retaliation, torpedoes launched upward, anti-ship missiles ready to shore, carrier battle groups engaging Soviet forces across the Pacific. Escalation would not have been optional. In Moscow, similar conversations take place, equally grim. The General Staff studies timelines measured in minutes. Political officers debate whether commanders in the field would have the restraint to wait for confirmation before responding. No one is confident. The truth neither side wants to admit is this: control was an illusion. Technology had outpaced human judgment. Wake tracking, nuclear propulsion, rapid response doctrines, all designed to ensure victory, had instead compressed decision-making to the point where accidents became existential threats. For the sailors aboard Kitty Hawk, life returns to routine. The damaged propeller is replaced. The official explanation remains vague. Some crewmen suspect more than they are told. Others choose not to ask. Years later, one will say, "We felt something hit us, hard." Then everyone acted like it never happened. On the Soviet side, K-314's crew is reassigned. They scatter across the fleet. Some leave the Navy entirely. None are permitted to speak of the collision. But memory is harder to classify. One sonar operator remembers the moment the wake vanished. A helmsman remembers the depth needle falling too fast. Medvedev remembers the weight of command, how close his orders came to writing a different ending for the world. When the Cold War finally ends, historians begin uncovering its hidden edges. Not the famous crises, the missiles, the speeches, but the near misses. the moments when war was avoided not by policy, but by chance. The collision between USS Kitty Hawk and K-314 becomes one of those stories. A reminder that history is not only shaped by decisions made in capitals, but by seconds in the dark, by instruments flickering in cramped control rooms, by captains who choose restraint when panic would be easier. On March 21, 1984, the Cold War did not turn hot. Not because it couldn't, but because in the black water of the Sea of Japan, steel met steel and stopped.